The National Desk, America's News, now.
Hurricane Beryl heads towards the Mexican Riviera after passing by the Cayman Islands and Jamaica. Why? Despite the death and destruction, Jamaica got off easy.
There may not be the amount of police protection that you have grown to expect in a community event.
What the FBI wants you to know as you prepare to celebrate America's birthday. And tonight, a popular sound machine sees nearly 1 million adapters recalled. What's being reported about incidents of minor electric shock? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. On this 4th of July evening, a live look for you over the beach at the Cancun Crystal Hotel and Resort as folks there prepare for Hurricane Beryl, now barreling towards Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as it inches closer to the United States. All the major resorts in the area in Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and Tulum will begin to get hurricane force winds. Dangerous storm surge and heavy rainfall beginning tonight before Beryl then makes landfall again late tonight or early tomorrow morning as a low-level hurricane. Beryl hit the Cayman Islands this morning as a Category 3 after passing through Jamaica yesterday, leaving a path of destruction and death. The death toll this week is up to 9, but the Jamaican Prime Minister told CNN while the country is still in assessment mode, this could have been a lot worse.
We had damage to agriculture and housing in 2 parishes, Manchester and St. Elizabeth. We have had some roads cut off and blocked. But outside of that, I think Jamaica was spared the worst.
The models for Beryl's path are a little more clear now. NOAA and the National Weather Service are predicting Beryl to decrease in strength over the weekend, but by Sunday, the southern parts of Texas could still be hit with tropical storm strength winds and rain. The other big story we're tracking for you tonight, high heat. Right now, over 174 million people under heat alerts coast to coast. The dangerous temperatures in the west, south, and mid-Atlantic could become deadly. This as the heat gears up for more widespread impact by the end of the week, persisting through much of next week in the west. With Independence Day activities in full swing, 55 million people are at risk for severe thunderstorms tonight, especially in parts of the upper Mississippi Valley and from the southern plains to the Ohio Valley. Damaging wind gusts and frequent lightning are the main threats here, but flash flooding is also a huge concern. And tonight, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have issued an alert for the holiday, warning about possible attackers who may target Independence Day celebrations. The National Desk's Jeff Harris explains what's included in the warning.
The FBI and Department of Homeland Security want to remind everyone that the biggest threats are lone offenders and also small groups who may have a larger agenda. So they're asking for the public's help, keeping an eye out and speaking up if they see something. Spokesperson for the National Police Association, Betsy Brantner Smith, tells us the intent behind this alert is to sound the alarm ahead of the 4th of July holiday.
So that people are aware as they're out at, parades and fireworks events.
Smith says it's important while you're out celebrating to keep your head on a swivel, especially at community events.
There may not be the amount of police protection that you have grown to expect in a community event.
A professor of forensic studies and retired law enforcement, David Thomas agrees, adding that police rely on the public just as much as the public relies on police.
Police actually can't do a very good job, or law enforcement or the FBI. Nobody can do a good job without information from the public that they serve.
Which is why this alert is a firm reminder that if you see something, say something. A tip James DeMeo, a professor at Tulane University, says you should always follow. Plus, he recommends creating a plan before going to an event.
Be aware of their personal situational awareness at all times. Obviously, how they get into a space, how they're going to get out.
According to the Gun Violence Archive, there were 80 mass shootings that occurred over the past 3 years between July 1st and July 7th. 25 in 2021, 27 in 2022, and 28 in 2023. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
4 anti-abortion activists have been sentenced for blockading a clinic near Nashville in 2021. Their punishments range from 6 months in prison to 3 years of supervised release. The judge said their religious beliefs did not give them an excuse to break the law. 7 others were convicted for their roles in the blockade. One was previously sentenced. The others will be sentenced by September. Alaska is suing the Biden administration for canceling oil and gas leases in the coastal plain of Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The governor says the move resulted in millions, maybe even billions in lost revenue. The suit accuses the U.S. of breaching its obligation to protect Alaska's interests and allow the state to build its economy through natural resources. Alaska is asking for $700 billion in compensation. And the move to ban non-compete agreements is on hold for now. Tonight, a federal judge has moved to temporarily block a new FTC rule set to start in September that bans employers from adding non-competes in worker contracts. The judge says the FTC does not have the authority to make the rule. The ban is postponed until the court makes a decision on the case's merits. The rule could impact millions of employees, both low and high wage earners, across all kinds of industries, including technology and medicine. While unauthorized border crossings have been falling recently, immigration and border security remains a top issue in this year's presidential election. As President Biden and former President Donald Trump spar over policy, the effects of the ongoing crisis are being felt across the country. National correspondent Christine Brazow has the story.
We're at the breaking point. There is no more room.
Mayors addressing a harsh reality of the nation's immigration crisis. The impact is overwhelming their cities.
We do not have space to add more folks that arrive, nor do we have staff to support them, nor do we have resources to support them.
Denver cutting services to shave $180 million from the 2024 budget. Chicago already shelling out more than $400 million to address the crisis. And New York reporting costs at $1.5 billion in fiscal year 2023, with that price tag going up.
The money comes from somewhere, and the money is going to come from services.
Staten Island Borough President Vito Fossella blames New York City's so-called right to shelter decree, which in 1981 established it as a sanctuary city.
It's costing more to accommodate migrants in New York City than most big cities' budgets on an annual basis.
The borough took the city to court to stop a planned migrant shelter and won.
It is not as bad here in Staten Island as it is in Manhattan or the other parts of the city, but our obligation is to be a voice for the people of Staten Island.
In May, New York City started evicting migrants under new time limit rules, but tens of thousands remain in hotels and shelters across the city. Mayor Eric Adams says Washington needs to step up.
The federal government must take responsibility and lead on this humanitarian crisis instead of leaving it for cities and localities to handle.
And with a bill to overhaul the nation's immigration laws dead in Congress, that lead will come from one of these two men.
I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border.
Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country by far, has totally surrendered our southern border.
When voters decide in November in Washington, I'm Christine Brazow reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Christine, thank you. And Spotlight on America is digging deep into the roots of this crisis in a new half-hour special called Ripples from the Rio. You can find it on thenationaldesk.com or on YouTube. Just search for Spotlight on America. And coming up, how much gas and food is costing you this 4th of July and how it compares to previous years. Then the fallout from last week's presidential debate continues. The new steps President Biden is taking to try and save his campaign. And later, some reminders from firefighters about how to stay safe when handling fireworks. We'll be right back. If you're driving anywhere this holiday, you may see a little relief at the pump. We are seeing the lowest July 4th gas prices we've seen in 3 years. Right now, a gallon of gas is $3.51. Unfortunately, we can't say the same about your holiday cookout. The American Farm Bureau reporting the average 4th of July cookout will cost more than $71 this year. That's a new record, up 5% from last year and about 30% from 5 years ago. Among the 4th of July celebrations in Washington, D.C. and the White House, the president is still facing an uncertain future in the wake of his poor debate performance last week. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, President Biden is starting to go on offense to try and save his campaign.
And the fact of the matter is that I screwed up. I made a mistake.
President Joe Biden giving his first interview following his disastrous debate last week that sparked calls for him to drop out of the race. The incumbent said he'd be sticking around for November.
We're going to win this election. We're going to just beat Donald Trump like we did in 2020. We're going to beat him again.
The interview was taped on the same day the president met with Democratic governors from around the country. Some of the Dem state leaders told the president about their own concerns over if he had what it takes to win and serve another term. Ultimately, they seem to rally around him.
The president is our party leader, and the president has told us, and he was very clear back there, that he is in this to win this.
Vice President Kamala Harris has polling momentum if the president were to step down. But 2 other names mentioned as possible replacements for Biden were also in attendance at the meeting. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer traveled to D.C. and both tweeted out their support for Biden afterwards. But as multiple sitting House Democrats have now called for the president to step aside, party members are reportedly weighing all options in the background.
Everybody comes on the air and says all this great stuff, but behind the scenes, it's full-scale panic.
That old broken down pile of crap. Yeah, it's a bad guy. He just quit, you know.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump insulted Biden on a leaked video from a golf course obtained by the Daily Beast. In the video, Trump speculates he'll be taking on the vice president in November.
I got him out of the way. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic. It's so amazing. It's just so bad.
The president will tape a highly anticipated and high-stakes interview with ABC News on Friday. It was originally scheduled to air on Sunday, but it was moved up to Friday night in prime time, highlighting the urgency of the situation for President Biden. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Matt, thank you. And the anticipated interview tomorrow night comes as President Biden gets scrutinized for spending limited time answering questions by the press. The White House this week defending Biden's record, making himself available to reporters.
This year, the president has done more than 40 interviews and unscripted, right? Those interviews are unscripted. He has done more than 500 gaggles, right? And so he enjoys doing that. He enjoys engaging with all of you, and we're going to continue making sure that happens.
According to reporting from Axios, President Biden has engaged in 164 press conferences and media interviews in his term as president through the end of June. But that's fewer than any of the last 7 presidents. Trump had logged 468 interviews over the same time period, while Obama logged the most at 570. Tonight, a conversation between President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as Israel's military campaign in the Palestinian enclave of Gaza continues after 9 months. The two spoke about the revival of ceasefire talks. Israel today said it would return to the negotiating table after Hamas reportedly made a new offer in recent days to Egyptian and Qatari mediators. The terms of that deal are not yet clear, but would include hostages released in exchange for a lasting truce. Hamas still wants Israel to withdraw its forces from Gaza, something Israel has not agreed to. Meanwhile, sparring at Israel's northern border continues as the Iranian-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah launched more than 200 rockets at several Israeli military bases today. They say the move was in retaliation for a senior commander that was killed. Israel says most of those projectiles were intercepted. U.S. citizen Robert Woodland was convicted today in Russia on drug-related charges and has been sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. He was detained in January. According to an interview with Russian media in 2020, Woodland was born in Russia but adopted by American parents. He said he traveled to Russia to find his biological mother before eventually moving there, and he is expected to appeal the decision. According to Reuters, though, at least 12 American citizens and service members are being held in Russian prisons, many of whom the State Department says are detained unlawfully, like journalist Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan. In your Consumer Alert tonight, Hatch Baby recalling nearly 1 million power adapters sold with Rest First generation sound machines. The company says their plastic housing on adapters can detach, posing an electrical shock hazard to users. The popular product has received 2 complaints of minor electrical shock. The recall includes products sold at various stores from January of 2019 to September of 2022. Customers asked to stop using those immediately and contact the company, which will issue you a new adapter at no charge. Well, just how old is the world's oldest cave painting? 51,200 years old. That is according to an international team of researchers who used a new dating technique to estimate the age of a cave painting in Indonesia. Historians say it shows just how far back modern humans began displaying the capacity for creative thought. The painting that depicts humans interacting with a wild pig showcases some of the earliest evidence of storytelling. The 4th of July is a time to reflect on our nation's history and independence. We often think of the founding fathers or iconic presidents, but in his new book, author Edward O'Keefe pushes us to learn the stories of those we're not familiar with, those that played critical roles in shaping our republic. Our Atra al-Nashar has more.
Carved into Mount Rushmore, Theodore Roosevelt's legacy is literally set in stone. But in his new book, The Loves of Theodore Roosevelt, The Women Who Created a President, author Edward O'Keefe shatters the myth of a self-made man.
From the beginning, the survival of Theodore Roosevelt was very much in doubt.
It was Roosevelt's mother, Martha Bulloch Roosevelt, or Mitty, who tended to the brutal asthma attacks he suffered as a child. O'Keefe credits her for the resilience the 26th president showed later in life. On his 22nd birthday, Roosevelt marries Alice Hathaway Lee.
Alice Hathaway Lee is this vivacious Boston Brahmin. She believes that the government should really be helping advance people and progress in the country. And this infuses in Theodore Roosevelt what will later become one of the hallmarks of his policies and his approach to the presidency.
Way ahead of his time, Roosevelt believed women should have the right to vote, own property, and be paid the same as men. When Mitty and Alice pass away on the same evening in 1884, Roosevelt writes in his diary, "The light has gone out of my life." It's his sisters, Connie and Bammy, who revive him emotionally and politically.
Do you think Roosevelt fully appreciated it?
That's a great question, Atra. I do. Theodore Roosevelt said, has anyone ever had better sisters than I have?
And of course, his second wife and first lady, Edith Kermit Roosevelt. In their White House years, she was his compass.
He said of Edith, his wife, that whenever I go against her judgment, I regret it.
O'Keefe's book makes a reader wonder what other women, marginalized and unacclaimed people should share credit for the achievements of the titans of our democracy. After all, in the pages of The Loves of Theodore Roosevelt is proof the most masculine president was actually the product of extraordinary and unsung women. In Washington, I'm Atra al-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Asher, thank you. And coming up, a behind-the-scenes look at preparation for a fireworks show in one of America's biggest cities right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. And this Independence Day, we are taking a patriotic pulse of America, starting in Washington State, where a big city is preparing for a big fireworks show.
The big barge looks peacefully placed on Lake Union from the Como 4 drone. Down inside the barge, pyrotechnic experts carefully place 7,000 pounds of fireworks to create massive bursts of color.
We have currently dropped all of the shells into the mortars. These are 4-inch shells.
We do have a map that's set out where these racks will sit.
And then I'm just going to tape it, and then it's ready to go into the firing system.
And then Dave Boyer, who's been at this work for 42 years now, tells me software precisely matches the explosions of color to the beat of the music.
So the computer knows exactly, if a shell has to fire maybe at 1.2 seconds before the note hits, so the shell breaks right at the right time.
That musical playlist is a secret, but I'm told it includes all genres.
This has made my day. Made my day.
It was a day that was long awaited and will be long remembered as veterans and supporters gathered in Waterville to take part in a journey that hasn't happened in Maine in nearly 10 years.
These people died for what we have today.
The Vietnam Traveling Memorial Wall is a 3x5 scale of the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. that travels across the country.
It's heartwarming, I served 22 years in the military. I got a lot of respect when I came back from Iraq. These gentlemen and ladies did not.
With kickstands up at 10 a.m. and a police escort to boot, a fleet of motorcycles roared through open roads and small towns.
It was very, very humbling to see so many spectators stand and salute and give their respects to what's going on.
There are a lot of significant amount of hand injuries on the 4th of July caused by fireworks.
Brown says it's important to dispose of fireworks and sparklers properly and don't allow children to light them.
What we recommend is a metal garbage can filled with water. We just want to make sure that everybody's safe and, make sure everybody is responsible with their alcohol, because alcohol and explosive devices don't mix.
The Henrietta Fire District says they get a lot of calls for illegal fireworks and reminds people to leave it to the professionals.
We'll get a lot of calls for those tomorrow. And sometimes they do land on roofs, and they might start a little fire.
Coming up, the new record set by a woman in this year's hot dog eating contest, plus how 16-time champion Joey Chestnut spent his holiday while barred from one particular competition. You can see it. Imagine having a city named after you. That's the honor Taylor Swift will soon get as the German city of Gelsenkirchen temporarily renames the town to Swiftkirchen. You see it right there. That's all ahead of the pop star's 3-day tour stop there later this month. The temporary name change was suggested by a local fan who submitted a petition to the mayor, and the city swiftly came on board. Other Swiftie changes to the city include the Taylor Swift tram and an open-air market called Taylortown. The Americana singer will also receive her own stone on the Gelsenkirchen Walk of Fame. Pretty cool. And it wouldn't be the July 4th without Nathan's hot dog eating contest in Coney Island, New York. World record holder on the women's side, Miki Sudo. She downed 51 hot dogs and buns for the first time ever. First time a woman has ever passed 50 hot dogs, and her 10th title at Nathan's. The men's side had a new champion crowned as Patrick Bertoletti of Chicago won his first ever title with 58 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes. Notably absent this year was 16-time champion Joey Chestnut, who was not allowed to compete because he signed a promotional deal with plant-based rival Impossible Foods. So instead, Chestnut spent his 4th of July at Fort Bliss in Texas, taking on 4 U.S. soldiers in a separate contest, which he won, eating an impressive 57 hot dogs in 5 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy 4th of July. Safe travels to you.